Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Between the Seasons, the mini-series from Why Does It Feel So Wrong to Be Human at Work? I'm Pinaki Kathiari, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Lee.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
And we also have our producer, Bree, on the line.
Hi.
And as y'all know, our special guest today is Rich Dome, Senior Director of Partnerships at LocalWisdom. Welcome, Rich.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Right on. So, Bree, tell us what we're going to do today.
So today I will be reading some Reddit stories or questions that I found. Rich, you are so great at networking and attending conferences and really getting the value out of them. So these Reddit stories that I pulled are about networking and are about conferences. And if you guys are ready, we can just hop right into it and I can read the first one.
Yeah, ready,
Let's do
guys?
this. Let's do it.
So this one comes from the subreddit Sales and is titled, I used to love networking events. Now I can't stand them. What happened to me? Have you ever had one of those moments at a trade show, conference, or networking event where you just cannot do it anymore? I have been in technical sales within the manufacturing materials industry for about 20 years. A couple of weeks ago, I attended a major event where I was invited as a rep for my sector. By lunchtime, I just could not stay any longer, not even for the fancy food and wine. Luckily, my partner was nearby, so we met, had a really good meal, went for a walk. After that, we went home, hung out with our cats and our dogs, and I finally felt a bit of calm. Honestly, I just wanted to vanish, to sit in a quiet chamber in complete darkness. I think I might be overworked or burnt out. I'm in what feels like my final big stint, helping a small startup manufacturing business grow. It's been incredibly challenging, probably the hardest sales role I've ever taken on, leading the entire commercial arm from scratch. Things are slowly starting to come together, but it's taken a serious toll. To make things even more frustrating, I'm now buried in internal operational work, endless meetings, admin planning, and process management, all of which takes me away from what I actually love doing: generating leads, prospecting, selling, and closing. I've even told our CEO and the chair of the board that it's getting ridiculous. I was hired to build the business, not to drown in internal processes. Maybe this is just a phase. Maybe I need a proper holiday. I used to love networking, meeting people, and building connections that turned into partnerships or deals. Now, I just cannot seem to find that spark. Has anyone else gone through something like this? How did you bring back your motivation for sales and networking, or learn to manage burnout without losing your edge? So, quite the story, I think. Obviously, a little bit more than just networking and conferences, but I would love to hear your guys' first thoughts.
Yeah, I'll jump in first because I've seen and been there before, so I think I can add a little bit of flavor to this. One thing that I would recommend when we're going to a conference, especially when we're going in person, is to pregame. I like to pregame to prepare mentally and also for the event. Some of the things that I like to do when I know I'm going to go to a conference is have some good food and some good coffee to get my mind cleared. And I also like to read a lot. Um, I think Panaki knows, but I read a newspaper every day, and not one online. I actually hold a paper in my hand. So I like to read stories because stories invoke um, thought provoking things to talk about when you're meeting people for the first time. Again, we want to find this common ground. So go into the conference with a pregame. Um, when you're meeting people, do not come off as being too salesy. Just build your pipeline and your network by talking about things that you might have in common with a person, whether it's someplace you've been or a favorite restaurant or a sports team. And that will lead to further exploration and more contacts and more networking and leads as you go through the conference that you'll be able to follow up on for the next time you speak. So there's some words of wisdom that I could offer. How about you, Panaki or Chris? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I was taking notes and thinking about this as well. Um, it kind of it reminded me of like kind of doing something that you love and enjoying it, and then it changing a little bit or you changing a little bit so you don't love it. So it's like social media for me was something like that. Like when I first joined social media, like the Facebooks and Instagrams and things like that, it was very like my own personal stuff. I used to love putting my photography up and things like that. But then when it became more of a job, it became a chore. and not as fun anymore. And those are kind of things that I'm like, the context of what I was doing changed, and so my relationship with it changed. And so I had to kind of think about, all right, like what about it has changed that I don't like, and how do I kind of work with this? And it's an ongoing relationship that I think I'm trying to figure out. So similar, it sounds like this person loved going to networking events, loved to like meet people and lead gen, and then something changed. And it sounds like this new position, perhaps the pressure behind the sales, because one of the things that Rich and I do when we go to conferences is we don't go looking for sales. We don't go looking for money. Roughly at the end of the day, we're looking to make good relationships. And when I set that mindset up, it's easier to just kind of go and talk and make friends than it is to go and try to make a sale. Right. And that's kind of a, I know you're in sales, but it's one of the things that we talk about is to not start by selling. And that might take the pressure off in order for you to enjoy it more. I have a few other thoughts on it, but I'll, I'll yield the stage for a little bit. Chris or Bree, if you have anything to add there too.
Chris, do you want to go first? Or
You look like you had something on your mind. I'll definitely jump in, but you better go first, Brie.
yeah, no, I was reading the comments of this one and it got me thinking a lot. And someone said, as someone who just came from a 2-day conference, I'm a firm believer that we have a tank that slowly starts
Hmm.
to empty. And it sounds like because of everything that was going on before this person went to the conference with all of the internal work that they're doing in their company that they're not used to doing, it sounds like their tank was already empty when they went. And when they got there, like they said, they just couldn't do it anymore. And that is what happens whenever you force yourself to do something while being burnt out. Like eventually you do have that crash. And I think that is what they experienced. And honestly, I'm glad they took the afternoon off and went home to spend time with their family.
Yeah, I agree with that. And actually, one of the things that you were just talking about, Pinaki, which I think is a really important thing for people to remember when you're out trying to network, and loosely tied to the purpose of the networking is obviously you're looking to build business. But I think thinking about it in that transactional way gets in the way of you being able to be an effective person in a social environment, right? And so I think sometimes people lose sight of what networking should be, which is, I think, for most of us, we enjoy social interaction with each other. We enjoy talking about what's happening in the world around us. And my sense is that maybe some people just sort of get fatigued with the small talk, right? And I think the small talk, I get fatigued with small talk all the time. And so I think it's always useful to come armed with something that you want to talk about that is beyond the weather, or obviously you always want to avoid topics like politics or religion, but ultimately there's got to be something better than the weather or sports. Not everyone's a sports fan. And even stuff at conferences where it's like, well, what do you think of the conference so far? What do you think of this speaker? Even that can get fatiguing over time. And so thinking about different ways that you can start the fire without using the same tinder and the same tools every single time, I think would be helpful to create some variety. And I feel like that's maybe what happened, is that this person might have found themselves in a place where they started to routinize the process of networking, and they all kind of felt the same. They all kind of started to meld together. I think you as much as you want to try to make it interesting for people you're trying to socialize with and network with, you do have to make it interesting for yourself as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, I agree. And it's also important to remember like these conferences, a lot of times it's not just like a couple hours at the event. It is the breakfast, it's the whole
Yeah.
event, it's the happy hour, the dinner, the
Especially if you had a
post-dinner
Especially if you
drinks.
had a trade show booth. Like
Mhm.
I
Oh yeah.
personally dislike trade show booths and like manning a trade show booth. It's like people are like have this weird relationship with folks at a trade show. Like they want to smile and say hi, but they're afraid you're going to talk to them and sell them something. And those little bits of negative energy, I think, affect you too. Like,
Mhm.
like all the, I know in sales, like we had to go through rejection therapy because we're constantly getting rejected more times because we're constantly asking for things. I think the comment before about battery being low
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. It looks like this person's issue was not exactly the conference or the event. It was perhaps the extraneous work and pressure that's coming from the organization for like creating internal processes and having to deal with internal politics. And I feel like, I don't know this for a fact because it wasn't in the post, but I feel like there is a pressure to sell because you're in startup mode. You have like your CEOs right there. They're having to probably talk to a board and kind of deliver finances. So there's a lot of pressure in there. And that's a hard thing to sell under pressure. At least it is for me. I don't know, like Rich, how do you handle like selling under pressures like that? Do you
Perfect.
alleviate
Yeah.
leadership or do you kind of work on yourself or how do you do that?
Perfect lead in. So, yes, there is selling under pressure that does happen, especially with a startup. So, one of the things I could offer is, again, going back to prepping before, and again, you have to have your battery charged
Mhm.
before you go to the conference. So, knowing that your battery's charged, what I would suggest is take the extra time and get that pre-conference list and do your research on the airlines, the pharma companies, the financial companies that are going to be there. You don't have to actually know the person personally, but if you know that a big pharma company is going to be there with frontline workers, you can identify some pain points that they may be having. So then when you talk to Mary Jones at pharmaceutical company A, you can say, "Hey, I see that you have 5,000 people that work in a manufacturing plant that don't use a laptop. And there may be a way to strike up some common ground there just to talk about things that are affecting their frontline workers." So by doing that research ahead of time, if there's pressure to sell, you're going to have a really good, foundation of who are the clients that are potential clients that are going to be at your conference and learn and just know their business a little bit. It takes a little bit of, research and time. But when you start having those conversations, you don't have to be salesy. You can just identify things that may be affecting their communications or their marketing departments that need addressing. So that's what I would recommend.
Rich, but one of the things that I would love to ask you about is, and it sort of builds on what you said, Pinaki, about why trade booths can be really ineffective. Because at the end of the day, what the person really wants is just the shirt, and I think they have to pretend like they're interested in your topic just so they can get the shirt or they can get their business card in the fish bowl so they have a chance to win the prize, the iPad or whatever. And I think part of the reason why there might be networking fatigue, especially with business development and salespeople, is that um, you know, anyone that's on the client side, you can almost feel them bracing for the pitch, right? And just getting ready, like, okay, what creative way am I going to be able to say no? Like, we don't have budget this year. We don't, we actually just found a vendor last year, so we'll keep your card and we'll keep you in mind. So how do you manage it, Rich, when you're already feeling the defense shields going up?
Yeah, at a trade show booth or just in general, Chris?
In general, I think it
Yeah.
happens probably more often at the trade booth because you kind of know
Yeah.
that's part of the gig. But
Yeah.
with even in general,
Like
when you're just standing in the buffet line and someone approaches you and wants to talk to you, you almost sort of feel like, okay, I see what's going on here. They're not really interested in
it's
talking to
it's
me
like that point. As soon
necessarily,
as you
but
say you're in sales, they're like, "Oh, okay."
yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's the other thing,
And
right? And I actually I
and
don't I think it's great that you say you're in sales because you're being above board and you're being transparent about it, but that also puts people in defensive, no?
yes, it does. But hence my title, Chris Lee. It's Senior Director of Partnerships. So I try to avoid that whole sales thing just from my title. So but
Smart.
yes, you can go into it's good, right? You go into defensive mode when you're at a booth or somebody comes up to you and they get a little turned off because they feel like they're trying to be sold. So, and that's why, and like Panaki said, we try to at Local Wisdom shy away from trade show booths, whereas we'd rather be out to dinner or at a happy hour with a networking opportunity where we're just casually talking to clients and listening. And like I said, when you do your research and you know who the audience is that's attending these conferences, you kind of are better equipped to go in and have a conversation with them to find that common ground and not try to start selling. Because when you try to start selling at a conference, like you said, Chris, you're usually going to strike out very quickly. So it's just building on the relationships, building the rapport to further the relationship down the road for another day, for a conversation that may or may not lead into a sale. It may lead into a referral. It may lead into a co-speaking opportunity for somebody at the company that you work. So I do think you have to go in with the right mindset. And I also understand when you're at a startup, there are pressures on you to sell. And if there are, you got to do your research to know who is on that playing field at those conferences so that you can go in equipped to have conversations that aren't too salesy, but that are going to develop a pipeline for you down the road. You're not going to sell anybody in line while you're waiting to get your pasta at the buffet line.
Yeah. Before we wrap up really quick, Rich, I would like to ask you, it sounds like from this story that this person was attending a conference in their city. So they did have the ability to go home. But let's say they traveled to another city and it was a plane ride, they're staying at a hotel, and they get there and they realize they are so burnt out. But they have 2 more days of this. What would you do in that situation where you're already there? You can't leave, but you just feel so drained from the work you've done leading up to the conference. How would you get back on track and put yourself in the right mindset so that you could complete the conference and actually make it valuable for yourself?
Bree, that's a great question. So, a couple things that I would offer to this person would be number one, clear your mind. So, if you're on overload and you feel like it's just a little too overwhelming, just take a step back. I know back when we had an office in Lambertville, we would take a walk at lunchtime and just clear our
I
minds. We were
love
right
that,
there on the
Rich.
water.
I believe
Yeah,
in the
just
power of a good walk. I love it.
yeah, just a 15-minute walk, right? And just kind of just let everything kind of naturally flow and take in the beautiful nature if you're walking on a trail or along the water and take in the nature, clear that mind. I always like something good to eat, a good cup of coffee, to recharge. Again, reading for me, just 15 minutes. If I read, a good story in the Wall Street Journal, that helps me, actually makes me smarter when I'm talking about opportunities with potential customers. So I think just the reset, the recharge by just taking a step away from where you're at. So if you're in Atlanta or you're in Chicago and you're at a hotel, take a little walk. There's always a good neighborhood. If you're not sure, ask the person at the front desk. They'll direct you to where you need to go. So just get away from that immediate atmosphere, take that break, recharge, and come back, saying, hey, this is going to be a positive experience. Turn it into a positive experience. I know that can be hard, but I think just stepping away for just a few moments and recharging your battery, because we all need to do it, will help you be successful for the remaining days or time that you have at the conference. Panaki, what about you?
That's a good thing. It reminds me of a few things that question is I agree about like finding the different things that recharge your battery because everyone has different things, right? Like Rich said, a walk, sometimes work out. I know people go for a jog or etc. So yeah, think about what does recharge your batteries, and even if it's being with your partner, maybe it's a phone call if you're there. Another thing we do, like at Local Wisdom, is they have the value of no one uh, is left alone. No one should be doing this or feel alone. And sort of kind of felt like you were alone in this place and all these people, but you were still alone. And that's a terrible feeling to have. So if I don't know if you could do this in your organization, but what I like to do is send groups out, like 2 people, so they could vibe off of each other and someone always has your back. Like Rich always gives me energy. I always give Rich energy. Chris gives me energy. I give Chris energy. And it's kind of like we're able to kind of like help each other out while we're there. And at least kind of it divides the work too. Like if more than, one of us is there, it's like the pressure is not solely on me as well.
Panaki,
Yeah, I
I'll
love
just
that.
quickly add that is a great thing that you just mentioned about going out in teams. And we do that at Local Wisdom. And what we'll do is when we're at the conference, we'll divide and conquer. And, maybe Panaki will go see one speaker and I'll go see another. But then at the end of the day, the thing that Local Wisdom that I love about Local Wisdom is we collaborate. So Panaki and I go out to dinner and we'll collaborate on what we learned and who we heard speak at a session. And, we'll come up with a strategy. And that tends to recharge you too, because you're always thinking, oh, what am I going to do tomorrow to, just further along these new connections that I have by having somebody out with you on the road. It takes a little bit of the burden off of you that you have to do everything by yourself. Don't you think, Chris?
Yeah, 100% agree. Rich, I got to tell you, I want to thank you again for joining us today. I learned so much from you, and I think it's really helpful for me as well to understand what I could be working on for myself. So you should just know you're always welcome here on our
Oh,
podcast. But really appreciate your
guys,
insights today, Rich.
you're all so sweet, and I thank you. And I would love to be a part of more in the future. But thank you, Bree and Chris and Panaki, for setting us all up. I love being a part of it.
So good to have you, and so good to hear your thoughts on this. Like, because like the way you work the room is masterful as well. So thank you to you, and thank you to our listeners for tuning into this week's Between the Seasons episode of Human at Work. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you soon.
Yep. Check us back
Thank you.
next week. We're going to have another short and honest conversation about the human side of work.
Thank you all. See you next time.